Good morning. I'm Dan Loch, a longtime parishioner of St. Jerome Church, and I've been invited to give this morning's reflection. I was an English literature major in college. T.S. Eliot's poem, The Wasteland, begins with the line, "April is the cruelest month." This April, I lost what I took for granted: church services, restaurants, movie theaters, haircuts, jobs, get-togethers, maybe the entire economy. Sometimes I only appreciate something when I no longer can have it. In losing what I took for granted and feeling powerless, I remembered what Nelson Mandela said: our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. This April, I saw how good, how powerful people can be. And that brings us to today's gospel. Today's gospel is a continuation of the gospel we heard on Sunday when Jesus spoke of himself as the Good Shepherd. Today's gospel tells of a separate occasion when Jesus again was in the temple and again spoke of himself as the Good Shepherd. The Jews, meaning the Jewish leaders, cornered Jesus and tried to put him on the spot. The Feast of the Dedication was taking place in Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus walked about in the temple area on the portico of Solomon. So the Jews gathered around him and said to him, "How long are you going to keep us in suspense? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly." Jesus answered them, "I told you, and you do not believe. The works I do in my Father's name testify to me." In other words, the works Jesus does, his preaching and miracles, are the evidence that proclaim him as the Christ, the Messiah. Then Jesus goes further and tells those questioning him, "The works I do in my Father's name testify to me, but you do not believe, because you are not among my sheep. My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they shall never perish. No one can take them out of my hand. My Father who has given them to me is greater than all, and no one can take them out of the Father's hand. The Father and I are one." My sheep hear my voice. What voices do I hear nowadays? Dr. Fauci's, the president's, TV news? There are many competing voices. How do I recognize the voice of Jesus? My sheep hear my voice. The voice I needed to hear was the good others do in tough times. The doctors, nurses, police, firefighters, and emergency personnel. The grocery store workers, post office workers, truck drivers, keeping supplies moving. Technicians and scientists researching a vaccine. When I do not hear Jesus' voice, I noticed others who do hear the voice of Jesus. For instance, the Saturday drive-by food drive, the online daily reflections by Fathers Roshan and David, the live stream masses and Stations of the Cross. And this helps me to hear the voice of Jesus. Now, some are put off by the use of the word sheep. Sheep are docile. They don't seem to be able to deal with danger. They simply plod along and munch. They follow where they're led. Who wants to be called a sheep? Well, it's hard to read very far in the Bible without bumping into shepherds. We find them in parables, psalms, and Christmas stories. Many biblical heroes herded sheep, like Jacob, Rebekah, Moses, and David. In his preaching, Jesus used images familiar to the people of the time. In the time of Jesus, sheep were extremely valuable. Many people were shepherds, and sheep were money. A shepherd protected and took great care of the sheep, much like what we'd expect a parent to do. So I am called to hear Jesus' voice as a child hears the voice of a beloved parent, and to trust. This is an image of the Good Shepherd from the heart. I must make an effort from my heart to pay attention and listen for this voice of Jesus. When a daughter or son hears the voice of a parent, their next move is to respond. The quality of how well I listen for the voice of Jesus has to be the actions I take in my life. Do I listen well enough to be more patient, more kind, more merciful, more understanding, more loving, to live in a way that is more like Christ? Do I recognize those who do listen? Whether between those who want to keep the coronavirus lockdown or those who want to open up, or between the United States and Iran, Democrats and Republicans, blacks and whites, or any other categories of difference, we build relationships only when we hear one another, only when I respond in ways motivated by trust rather than fear. And so Jesus says, from his heart, my sheep hear me. And to me, to us, if I choose, if you choose to listen, Jesus promises eternal life. What does his voice sound like to me, to you? What is the Good Shepherd calling me and you to? Just pay attention and listen. I and you get many chances each day to hear him. We are powerful beyond measure.